No.
Okay.
Turn it up.
Reverend Fathers, ladies and gentlemen, Deputy Tarevi, Councillor McSharry. You can't hear me? Okay, not talking loud enough. You're all very welcome here, and we're here tonight to learn more about fracking. We have Jessica Ernst here with us from Canada. She has been travelling around the northwest in the past week, and we're delighted to have her here in the Rainbow. Jessica Ernst is, as I say, from Canada. Her background is biology and environment consultant, and has worked for the oil and gas industry, and is a landowner as well, as a lot of people around here are. She would have worked in Alberta, where there seems to be a lot of problems there at the moment. And I'm told here since I came in that she got a recent award, Woman of Courage. So maybe a big hand for Jessica. As I said, she worked in the gas and oil industry for some time. But some things started going wrong, and indeed Jessica will tell that story, and we can see what transformed over in Alberta in Canada, and Jessica will tell that story in her own words. For tonight, we have a chairperson, Mary Daly. Mary will keep an eye on you all and make sure that you behave yourselves. I think the presentation is about an hour and a half. And afterwards there will be a question and answer session, and everyone is invited to ask questions. Not make statements, just ask questions. And I might invite up Mary now to chair the proceedings.
I said to them, will you for God's sake push that microphone down, I'm not that tall. Folks, I'll just pass you straight over to Jessica Ernst, and after she's given her talk, then we'll open the floor for questions and answers. Okay, I hope you'll get a lot of it.
So sorry, can you hear me? Pardon? It's on now? Yes. Ah, that's better. Technology, I'm so sorry for the, little too loud. Sorry for the technical delay. Because of the delay, we'll just jump right in. What a crowd. Before I start, it's really hard to do these things. And I know for most people it's really hard to speak out, even in your own community. With this fracking, let that fear go. I'm up here doing it. I think everyone has to start speaking out about this, even if it's asking really stupid questions when I'm finished. So, this is me and my water on my land. My dog Bandit is in the bottom corner. Rosebud is about 100 kilometers northeast of Calgary. Do you all know where Stampede City is? No? Alberta, Canada, in the west. I'm going to tell you tonight that laws and regulations will not protect us from the new brute force experimental fracking. This is not the fracking they tell us they've been doing all these years. It's very different. And they're now coming up with what they call super fracking. How many of you here do not know what fracking is? Whoa, oh, one. Two, don't be shy. Come on, the best way to learn is when you say you don't know. What they're doing, the conventional oil and gas, they would drill a hole. These are all, there's some deep wells there, some shallow, and the oil and gas would just come out by itself. Now, the gas and oil were out of the good stuff, so they have to shatter formation underground with experiments, high pressure, very high pressures, chemicals, and shooting holes in their casing. They're doing horizontal lines, and they're trying to cover as much ground underneath as they can to force the reluctant oil and gas to let go. It's a very different process than what it used to be. In this diagram here, this is by our regulator in Alberta. You have a water well there. This is the fresh water, the water table, a coal bed methane well. They're calling this where they're fracking, a deep shale well, horizontal. I've been told that the company here, Tamboran, is planning to do horizontals fairly shallow here in Ireland. And this is a waste disposal well. This is the casing with cement and then steel that they tell us protects us in our groundwater. One of the things they're not showing here, and I get very angry at our regulators because they're still misleading the public, they say they're just fracking down here, but they're actually fracking. In my community, they fracked right into our drinking water, and they're doing thousands of wells where the fresh water is. I'm going to introduce you quickly to some players in my story. The regulator keeps changing names. I think they do that to make it a very difficult story to tell. The energy regulator in Alberta used to be called the Energy Utilities Board until they were caught breaking the law, spying on innocent Albertans. And the government changed their name to the Resources Conservation Board. Our freshwater protector, Alberta Environment, I will refer to them through this evening as Alberta Environment, but they have changed names many times too. They just recently changed the name from Alberta Environmental Protection a few years ago, then Alberta Environment, now Alberta Environment and Water. I think they did that because water has become a massive global concern. So they're trying to make it look like the government is doing something, but they're not. The Research Council is another player. They too changed names after I went public with some very shoddy work that they did. I have an Encana logo there. Can you guys see at the back? And I'm going to tell you a little bit of hanky-panky about Encana and the Research Council later on. When they were the Research Council and they had their website up, they stated quite proudly that they were meeting the needs of industry, meeting the priorities of industry. When I was invited to come here, I took a look at the website for Tamboran. Our regulator says we have best in the world, that we have world-class regulators, and Tamboran says the same thing, that they're world-class. And imagine my surprise when I saw that Mr. Richard Moorman was VP of Corporate Development of Lior Energy that sold to Encana, the player in my story, in 2007. That's an important connection. We were told, and I have heard that you have been told, no, that's fine. Oh, is this light, do you guys want this light turned off to make it better to see? Everybody's fine? You sure? We don't want any complaining after. Speak now or it'll be too late. When I go home, oh yeah, that yellow light is really annoying. Those Canadians. Turn it off?
Try it with it on.
Turn it off, let's try it. Yeah, we're good. I'm a frack experiment anyways, may as well try me with the lights too. Okay, I'll try to keep going. So, we were told, when they started, there was talk of all these experimental things going on. We were told, don't worry Albertans, we will never let happen to you the terrible things they got away with in America. Why? Well, we have best in the world, we're world class. I've heard that you've been told that too. Is that right?
Yeah.
History. I'm going to start with historic data on some of our water wells. Gas present, yes or no? My neighbor's well across the river, gas present, no. My well, a county well, gas present, no. The county drilled a well for the municipal Rosebud supply. I have my own private water well. Here are the records. You can't read them. The yellow shows the legal land description. I think you guys call that land title. What do you call that here? Pardon?
Land title.
Land title, yeah, it's the legal, it's not land title, it's the sort of address of the land, but a legal number. Date, 1986. Sorry?
Townland.
Townland. I was told that at supper, but I forgot. My name and where it says gas present, no. I blew up that part without the yellow. Can you see it at the back? My legal team looked at 2,300 such records within about 50 square kilometers of my water well. Only 4 had stated that they had a gas that could possibly have been methane present before they began the experiments. That's less than 0.17%. Some researchers in Saskatchewan, in the 70s, they sampled almost 1,000 water wells and springs. They found methane concentrations highest where petroleum industry drill hole density increased. That's a long time ago. This is before the new brute force fracking. They did find methane in some of them. 95% of the samples, though, had far less than 0.3 milligrams per liter. I don't know how many times I've been told and have read, but there was never a documented case of fracking causing contamination to groundwater or well water. That got exposed this last summer, that even the EPA was lying. Worse, that industry, the EPA, and the regulators knew about this case, and Ian Urbina with the New York Times dug really deep, and he found out that there were hundreds more reported contamination cases sealed by confidentiality agreements. They are wrong. I think they must be made illegal. I don't think any of us has the right to cover up contamination in our wells or in lakes and rivers because we share our water. Southern Manitoba, peer-reviewed study, fracks propagated out of zone. They keep telling us this is safe, we know what we're doing, we've been doing it since the 50s, it stays in zone. We frack into targeted zones and we stay there, they don't. In this case, they propagated into underlying water zones. Husky studied gas migration from energy wells because it was a big problem. They concluded it's a big problem. It's expensive to fix and difficult to completely stop. The photo is of my community. The white signs are the descriptions of the gas wells. They require a legal identifier. Those are the addresses of them. Some of them have a number of wells on them. That's not part of Husky's study. Unconventional gas drilling comes with an unprecedented amount of drilling. More and more and more wells. 46% of the energy wells Husky tested had gas migration. How many of you seen Gasland? The same discrediting that has been done against Josh Fox in the film, they have done to me. It's natural. In this Husky report is this quote, "Could some part of the problem be attributable to natural sources?" Those are the sources they're blaming Gasland and me for, that it's natural, that we have nothing to be complaining about, there should be no movie made. But using the well bores as a conduit. So in the 90s already, industry was asking the question, are we causing the natural contamination into groundwater? By the way, if you have industry attacking you really hard, the way they have Gasland, you know you've done a really good job. So I say bravo to Josh. Chafin, a study by the American Geological Survey in the 90s. This was done because of numerous water wells that went bad in shallow frac experiment zones. These are those problems they tell us will never happen to us. They didn't find that nature was causing the upward migration of gas. The gas wells are more important than nature for the upward movement of gas. Again, my community, there's 34 gas wells there on those signs. This is years ago. The signs keep getting more and more and more. Man-made migration pathways probably introduced most near surface gas to the study area. We have a big oil and gas lobby group. The acronym is CAP. They studied it with our regulators. And they even titled it this, Migration of Methane into Groundwater from Leaking Energy Wells. They didn't say migration of methane into groundwater from nature. This was in the 90s. It's about this thick, the study, multi-year. That's a scan of the report. They too did the same thing my lawyers did, my legal team, but they have one hell of a lot more money than me. Oops, I just swore. Am I forgiven? Yeah. 24,000 historic water well records on the Alberta side by the regulator. The regulator reviewed these records. less than, or sorry, 0.00%, 17 of those had gas present before oil and gas development. 0.17% after gas development had started, but before the super fracking experiments had gas present. That's the same percent that we found for the legal case. It's not very many. These are the records there. You can't read them, of course, but I thought I'd stick them in the presentation because that's before oil and gas, that's after. Even a 5-year-old can see there's a difference. We don't hear about that in the news. They also looked at methane dissolved in water. They said it's very useful for as data in the region, used in the region. The levels they found were very low. Yes, they found methane in most of the water wells they looked at, but most of them had less than 0.05 milligrams per liter. If you can remember that, try. I'll remind you later on. The two highest were just over 1. This lobby group had in their report that 1 milligram per liter methane in groundwater in your well water is risk of explosion if that water passes a confined space in your home or your barn. They also talked about how dissolved and free gas can move into and through an aquifer. They had a rough diagram. In those days, there's one pathway, there's another pathway, and another one here. Migrating gas, aquifer. Migrating gas to surface will also kill vegetation. You won't even get a weed growing. We have circles of dead zones. They too found increased levels of methane in groundwater near leaking energy wells. The highest, or the highest that I could see in their study was 19.1 milligrams. That's very different than just over 1 milligram per liter. I bought my home in 1998. I fell in love with the old farmhouse. My house is behind, but I really love history, and we don't have very much in Canada. I love yours. I've never been here before, but no, it's not funny. You have a resource in your history here. Has anybody assessed the resource for this fracking? What is the impact to your history? That's 100 years old. And I love it. That's why I bought that land. Prairie history. Most of the farmers let it fall down. You have something here. Very valuable. I love beauty. I love the big sky. I love freedom. The unconventional gas has brought an incredible amount of deregulation to my province and stripping of our rights. The green behind is the barn where my water well is. Hutchinson, Kansas. This is an explosion that first responders had a very difficult time taking care of. Fires and explosions moved 3 miles the next day and killed 2 people. This is the water there at that time. Trican, a big frac company, they teamed up with Husky in 2002. The percentage of leaking energy wells they looked at ranged from 12 to 80%. A very important workshop happened in 2002. This is the ministers across our country of environment. Regulators also attended. And guess what they found? Industry's future impact on groundwater could be immense. I never read this in the mainstream media. Unconventional natural gas drilling poses a real threat. They didn't say nature is going to contaminate your water. Unconventional natural gas drilling to quantity and quality. And Canada didn't care. The year prior, in 2001, they started to use the pregnant women and children, and I still get enraged about that. They used them as guinea pigs. They used me as a guinea pig and our water. These are gas wells that were all experimental, shallow, fracked gas wells in my community within about 6 miles of my water well. In 2001, they perforated at 100 meters. In 2004, they fractured directly into our drinking water supply, in secret. I know this now from their own data, but I did not know it at the time. The stop sign shows the little regard Encana has for our road laws. These are gas well addresses, there's 4 of them, access to. It's a stop sign. They're changing, yeah, you're not allowed to do that. They didn't even have the respect to us and our safety and our children and the school buses to pound in their own post. This tells you all you need to know. When Morgan, CEO, at the time of the experiments, I didn't know those things. In 2003, I began experiencing a lot of noise. I love rural life. I don't mind noise during seeding and harvest. Those are joyful noises to me. Kids playing. Compressor noise, but I didn't even know what it was. Sounded like a jet taking off, 24/7. Worse at night. Disrupted sleep, drove my dogs crazy. I'd be driven in from outside. My neighbor came to me and said, Jess, my water well went bad after Encana did some wells near me, and they want to do more, and I want the money. I didn't want to take the money away from him, so he said, you better get your well tested. They needed to access my land to get to his land. Lucky for me. Encana came, they didn't argue. They tested my water. The tester did not report visible gas. He said the water appearance was clear. And just before I came to Ireland, the regulator in Quebec contacted me and asked for some of my research. And a producer had a photo of his water in Quebec, and an agronomist had sent it to me, because it looked like mine now. And I sent it to this regulator, and he says, oh my gosh, even naturally contaminated water, you don't see it like that. Like you can't even see naturally contaminated methane in water. Here's the records there, it's very hard to see. So again, blew it up, appearance clear. I'm a scientist, so my presentation's a little bit technical and boring because I don't like to say anything unless I can document it or back it up with documentation. The Alberta Research Council at the time, they came out with a report that said, natural release from coal formations in Alberta is rare because the formations are tight. That means the gas doesn't want to let go. They didn't say nature did it, or is doing it, or that it's a natural problem. When I went public with this report, it vanished off the internet. A casing expert in Canada, Maurice Dussault, in 2003 said leaking methane gas from thousands of resource wells posed massive environmental problems. Massive. Escaping methane changes the water and generates aquifer problems. Coleman, do you remember the explosions in Hutchinson, Kansas? 2004, years later, they did very serious studies and found that leaking energy gas from a leaking energy well migrated almost 7 miles. I was given a tour of the lease site. When I think about 7 miles, or even let's say 6, and sort of the big area, 6 square kilometers, like your whole lease site area, if you think about how far gas can migrate, you're affecting potentially your rivers and your lochs before you even start. It's a serious thing you need to look at. Here's some of the records of Encana. This is the shallow well that fractured our aquifer. These are the actual energy records. Unprecedented amount of energy drilling comes with unconventional gas, but also unprecedented amount of holes in the casing they tell us protects us. These are all the layers that they perforated holes into the casing. There's 24 zones. Fractured wells come with a lot of impacts, and nobody has studied that I have found the cumulative effects of all those holes in the casing and then the high pressure fracturing on the cement and steel seals. Encana knew that they were intentionally fracturing our drinking water supply. The data I just showed you was that's the energy well data, that's the energy regulator. This is the water protector. They filed these records on the Alberta water database, the drinking water database. Can't read them, it says Encana. Here are the 6 zones they perforated directly into our water. There's 6 layers. The most shallow One of the reasons we were so delayed is that the projector for some reason is cutting off the edges. I'm very sorry, and we couldn't fix it. And by the way, it's actually a very good symbol, because when they shatter and fracture your formations underground, nobody can fix that. Here it would be 121.5 to 122 meters. That's insane. That's really shallow. It's cruel, I think. They didn't tell us. I didn't know then. A manager with the regulator, shallow operations can be high risk. When I first started this tour, I heard that Tamboran plans to frack around 1,000 meters. Tonight I heard that it might be 500 as well. Think about this. This presentation was always publicly available, and I just linked to it on our legal case website last year, and it has since vanished off the internet. Water wells started to go bad. This is a scan from a report for Encana by a hydrogeologist. Water well, they're the first ones that went bad. My water well's down the valley over here. This is the well. They perforated and fractured multiple freshwater aquifers. They diverted fresh water out of the well. They did this without a permit. Why? This is a requirement under our Water Act. They broke the law. They violated all the regulations in place to protect us. They told us the stuff that happened in America, those terrible things, would never happen to us. That's what they were saying at this time. All allegations for my case have yet to be proven in court. All of these parties, Encana and the government and the regulator, will have chances to respond. But why would somebody violate the Water Act? If you have to get a permit, one of the requirements is to consult. If Encana came to you, or if Tamboran came to you and said, look, we're running out of oil and gas, we want to frack your drinking water supply, whether it be a river or your groundwater or whatever, what would you say?
No.
Ah, come on. Thank you. Can you do it a little louder? Yeah, that's what we would have said too, even us conservative cowboys in Alberta. So why would they do it in secret? So I blew it up, whoops, I guess good jump? Yeah, that's the blow up. To this day, they did almost 200 shallow experiments around us. Now, we do not know what chemicals were injected. I've tried and tried and tried. You do not find out before they start, and when you're fracked and contaminated, good luck. You don't have to read this all, just the red. Failure to prevent contamination of fresh water by gas. This is in Encana again, in Colorado. They racked up record fines that have since now been surpassed by others. They started producing all kinds of freshwater problems with one of their experiments, and they couldn't even fix what they did. They tell us the cement will protect us. Go home, it's a Friday night. I can't believe you Irish here learning about fracking on a Friday night. Wow. Shouldn't you be down at the pub or?
Not till 11.
Later. Well, pressure cracked the remedial cement, a supervisor error. Don't forget that these are human beings running these crews.
Yeah.
They're doing experiments, and they are, for the most part, not very well trained. And they're humans, and they make mistakes. I got this from Freedom of Information. Took me years to get it and a lot of money. They didn't even tell us that they had screwed up them trying to fix the problem they had created. Don't worry, we won't let what happened to you, to the Americans, happen to you. So Encana investigates itself and says, oh, we're innocent. We did nothing wrong. We're angels. And the regulator and the company blamed our local water well driller. He was furious. I would be too. There's lots to this story, lots more to this story than I'm presenting tonight, and it's already too long. I was working for Encana at the time of all these experiments, and found out that the company was lying to me and my community, so in August of this year, of that year, 2004, I resigned. Imagine what I would have done had I known they were experimenting with our water. I didn't know, but I resigned. I said, how could I ethically work for you if you're lying to my community? Well, I think that's the only reason they finally started to consult. They promised us. What's a promise? What does it give you? I've heard many, many, many. Comfort didn't get, well, yeah, but not even comfort. Because it's something empty. You have nothing in your hand. They promised they'd only frack far below our drinking water aquifers. This is October. The data I showed you was March 2004. Half a year previous, they had already fracked our aquifers. They told us also that they would only frack far below the impermeable layers to prevent gas migrating into our water. They're fracking the impermeable layers. I have heard they're telling you the same thing. Don't worry, the impermeable layers will prevent gas from migrating. Gas migration doesn't just contaminate water. It'll kill the surface vegetation where it's leaking up. A few months later, our community's water tower blew up in an explosion, seriously injuring a worker. We didn't know that the company had experimented with us at the time. We were told a worker was to blame. And it wasn't until a few months ago that I was going through some old archives on the internet. I'm always researching this stuff. I couldn't believe it when I found this article. Investigators say an accumulation of gases appears to have caused the explosion that destroyed the Rosebud water reservoir and sent a worker to hospital with serious injuries. Accumulation of gases. What's the purpose of fracking?
Gas.
To let the gas, to force the gas to let go, the gas that doesn't want to let go, that the Research Council said in 2003 doesn't let go by nature. There's the old water tower there, or the one that blew up. Yeah, imagine a water tower blowing up. Oh, and I forgot. Back then, when Encana consulted finally, they promised one small part of the community $150,000. Well, they put the reservoir underground. The new reservoir cost about $700,000, and the people paid. Encana hadn't even given the promise yet. What's the promise of the money for? Well,
propaganda.
Yeah, they want to control the voice. So who's going to speak out if they start getting problems with their water or something? If you think you're going to get some money, so there's that, and then there's the divide. Divide and conquer. Not everybody. Why didn't they give everybody the money? They just gave a small part of the community. It's never enough. These are two rigs that are about 400 meters apart. Near homes. You have a beautiful valley here. All the valleys are beautiful. They will, what's your legal, how close are they allowed to come to your barns and your corrals and your homes? What's your setback distance? Do you guys even have that here in Ireland? 100 meters in Alberta. Doesn't matter if the gas is deadly and can kill you, or if it's sweet gas. You want rig drilling right beside your house, your corrals? My water dramatically changed. Caustic burns after bathing, irritated eyes. Of course, I didn't know what was going on. My water well became a better gas well than a water well. There was so much gas, it was forcing the taps open, whistling like a train. Soaps and shampoos suddenly made no sense. And there was so much gas in the water that it was spurting out and keeping the toilet seat wet every time you'd flush. Like someone else would go in, use the toilet, and go, hey, how come the toilet seat's wet? And I go, I don't know, like Alberta's really dry. I don't have your problem. I can see you guys' toilet seats being wet here in Ireland. Not in Alberta. And the edge of the bathtub and the floor. But I didn't know why. I didn't know. I thought, oh, well, I was busy. But you remember the water of the photo Hutchinson, Kansas with the gas? That was gas forcing the water out. And it wasn't until, at this time, the government's telling us all kinds of promises. I'm ashamed. I believed them. I did. And I'm really ashamed that I wasn't able, I've been working in the patch over 20 years by this point. I know that, oh, patch. We call it the patch. That's the oil and gas industry. I didn't protect my community. And I have a lot of experience. And I have 2 degrees in science. And it wasn't until one day I poured fresh water for my dogs and they backed away from it that it hit me really hard. They're lying. There's my water after fracking. The cattle producer from Quebec, the photo I got just before I came to Ireland here was a pail, was for watering cattle, like oh geez, I can't think, you know what I mean. A trough. And it looked like that. But the photo was taken from above. And the producer, the agronomist said the producer is concerned about the health of his livestock. Are there any studies on ingesting methane? And could you send them to me, please? So I wrote him back and said, well, unfortunately, no, there are no studies that I know of. And what about other chemicals? Did you have it tested? And I asked him a whole series of questions. I said, is the producer and his family, are they using this water? They could be at risk. And he wrote back and said very, very tartly, oh, there was always methane in the water. Didn't answer any of my questions. I asked permission to use the photo. I wanted to show it to you here in Ireland. And he said no. Colleagues came to look at my water. They said, get it tested, so I did. I sent samples off. The noise continues. Now this is I'm going into the second year here. What is this, 2005? Terrible. And Canada does 2 studies. So on top of being abused by the impacts, then they abuse you more because they come and do falsified studies to claim themselves innocent. Waste your time, microphones in my yard. They move the microphones to non-compliant locations, all kinds of tricks. One of the tricks, you Irish are really good at tricks. Let's see if you can figure this one out. The regulations in Alberta say if you're testing for a noise complaint, you have to be 15 meters from the place of the complaint. Makes sense, right? Well, when Canada did the first noise study, they put the microphone almost a kilometer away in the hamlet. I don't live in the hamlet, near the community hall, right beside the busy highway. They turned the noisiest compressor off. And then they said, Rosebud's a naturally noisy place. Well, I'm a scientist, so I said, no, that's no good. So they did another noise study, and lots more were strict. So then they tried to sneak in an increase in noise. I don't have time to go into decibels, but 5 decibels increase in the industrial noise that was already happening. They were making it to Encana's non-compliant levels. It was unbearable to live with. I was driven here today, I got out of the car, and I feel nothing here. And I hear nothing but birds and neighbors, the wind, the trees. Quiet. What is the value? What is the monetary value of quiet? How many places in the world have quiet anymore? So I warned citizens. I have numerous Albertans getting very concerned. I sent them the warning. I dashed off to the Yukon. I'd been asked to talk on fracking to the First Nations up there, and I came home. They didn't regulate the non-compliant in Canada. They banished and regulated me, the victim. I've instructed my staff to avoid any further contact with you. This is the same manager. Do you remember the presentation in 2004 by the manager from the regulator who said shallow operations can be high risk? This is the same guy. There's his letter. I blew it up. Too many people here so you can't see it. I have been told that these presentations will be made available on some websites, so you'll have access to these. They copied their letter to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, to their surveillance branch, and their security branch. They judged me making criminal threats. They judged me being a danger to society and to the regulator. I thought that's pretty serious, so I wrote them some questions. Under what legislation did you find an innocent Canadian guilty without evidence, without a trial? And that's how serious they took my banishment. They returned my letter without opening it. This is the best in the world, regulator. Best in the world. The amazing thing was I had got a week-long, lots of media in the Yukon. A journalist at the Edmonton Journal wanted to interview me, came down. In the meantime, the water data came. The day she arrived, we opened the records together. This showed up in my mail when this showed up on the front page of the Edmonton Journal. So now I have too dangerous water to live with, and I have no regulator. What a great, no, but that's a really good way to regulate unconventional oil and gas. The new fracking. you don't want to deal with the problems. It's really very brilliant on industries and the regulator's part. That's my water. Finally, the regulator comes out with a little bit of a regulation for the shallow fracks. What's important here is that they admitted shallow fracks had shot up out of zone and harmed other energy wells. You don't have other energy wells. I can already hear Mr. Richard Moorman say, oh, but Ireland doesn't have all those energy wells. Well, you have some, and you have some that are other. You have one that's already leaking gas. Two leaking gas? Okay. Geez, every hour that I'm here, I learn more. But what if they come up other things? What if the frac fluids shoot out? You don't know what's going to happen here. They also said that there may not always be a complete understanding of fracture propagation at shallow depths. They don't know what their shallow fracks do. The government knew they had failed us. They promised all affected families, I'm just one of many, but people in Alberta have become very scared to speak out. They promised us safe alternate water now and into the future, regardless of whether the methane was from natural flow or not. The government finally comes to test. Remember when they blamed our local water well driller for the contamination? Well, they came and tested. There was a horrific amount of gas. They could see there was something seriously wrong. And before they even got their records, they said it was my fault because I didn't have cattle and didn't use enough water. 3 days later, we have an emergency meeting with the regulator and the minister and his hydrogeologist, and without data, they still didn't have the data for our tests. They said, oh, you are to blame because you used too much water. I have 2 dogs, yes, but they were at the time very small. And me. That year, April 2006, the government tested some of Encana's wells, and they tested some of the water wells. They can fingerprint the same way the police can fingerprint who was in the bank when the money went missing. They can fingerprint where the gas comes from. They found that the ethane, propane, and butane in some of my community's water wells matched those from Encana's wells. They didn't even test the most shallow ones. They didn't tell us. I got this from Freedom of Information years later and after lots of money. That's the actual record where there. These are some of the chemicals. They found hexavalent chromium, a known carcinogen. They found evidence of petroleum distillates. They found xylenes, toluene, benzene, lots of other things. My water, the chromium went up by a factor of 45 after Encana fracked the well. In 2003, when I was lucky enough to have those tests, they still tested for metals. Of course, now they know they're having all kinds of problems with water contamination. They refuse to test for metals anymore. Also evidence of petroleum distillates. The same phthalates and alcohols that the EPA found in the Wyoming Pavilion, Wyoming. Bye. It's been a long week. Bruce Jack. Did you guys ever hear about this in the news?
No.
We didn't in Canada either, or in Alberta. That's his water. I don't know if you can see it at the back. That's the water there. That's his well. That's gas making it shoot up like that. Well, he fought and fought and fought, and finally, industry sent 2 water well testers. When they came, they were getting out of their truck, he went to turn his well on, and all 3 men ended up in hospital with really serious injuries. Bruce had to sell his cattle, because when he came home he's a farmer, a rancher, when he came home out of hospital a month later, he couldn't take care of his herd. Promises, promises. This is Encana's chemical storage in my community in the rain. Good thing it doesn't rain in Alberta as much as it does here. What are you going to do on these steep hills? How fast is this stuff going to wash off down into the creeks and the lochs? They're promises. That's ultra break, pallets of it, no ingredients. I don't know what was in that. Pallets and pallets of petroleum distillates. In 2006, our research council, the little hanky-panky Encana Research Council, I found this via Freedom of Information. This was after a couple years later, after over $4,000. That's about 2,000 euros. They said that they were going to blame bacteria for the contamination cases. And then they said that in writing, we wouldn't like it. So they were already starting to discredit Gasland before Josh even started his journey. This is not natural. The government at this point was refusing a comprehensive investigation. They were refusing a proper sampling protocol. And in the meantime, Encana gets to drill and frack, drill and frack, drill and frack. This is where they fracked the aquifers. My water well's about a mile over there. This is a nitrogen frack. Yes, it's true, you can do chemical-free fracking. But there are chemicals needed to drill. And there are chemicals needed to service and acidize because they damage formation when they drill, if they have a good crew. And then after the fracking comes all kinds of other problems. This is an international problem. It's so serious, gas migration from the energy industry, that they created an international network of experts, our regulators ago. From the second meeting report, this is the first one from their first key conclusion. There is clearly a problem with wellbore integrity worldwide. There's the cover. After I went public, our regulator, I never heard that all water wells in Alberta were naturally contaminated with methane. You saw the historic records. After I went public, suddenly the regulator said all water wells are naturally contaminated, especially all of those in coal. They did their own study. 90% of the water wells in coal they tested had no methane or ethane. And all of the industry wells had natural methane. When they frack for shallow gas, like they want to do here, they're going to produce the natural type of natural gas they're talking about. All natural gas is natural, but the stuff that they're using to discredit the water contamination cases with is what they are fracking for. That's my water. These are the levels of methane in our water. The highest in the study by the oil and gas industry near a known leaking energy well was 19.1. We have 3266. There's been a recent report that thinks we have 3 times that because of bad sampling by the government. 1 is risk of explosion. Things happen. This is a rig that was drilling, and Canis says it hit something underground. This is what we call a lost circulation event or a blowout underground. They use chemicals to drill. This happened in the level where the community gets our water from. They never came to monitor those water wells. Monitoring is to watch for contaminants moving through the water. In the investigations of this, Encana said their rig came to rest on the trailer. Do you think that's funny? Come on. It's Alberta. It's windy. The wind did it. And a worker was sent to hospital with shock. The government finally commits to a comprehensive investigation. They changed labs halfway through to one that detected the ethane, but didn't fingerprint it. So that's like going to the bank. Oh, it was Joe that did the robbery. So let's just get the cleaning staff to come in and clean the vault out. They already knew the ethane indicated match to Encana. 6 years too late, they finally come and they start some monitoring wells. Do you know the difference between a water well and monitoring well? Ever heard of that? Nope. Water well, that's the water we use for citizens, industry, and municipalities, counties. A monitoring well is usually used by industry or government to track contaminants. They don't actually use the well, they use it to get samples from. So they finally drilled some in 2007, but after 6 years of experiments, to get baseline data, they said. This is best in the world now, don't laugh. As you're making me, you're insulting my province. Just kidding. You probably can't see at the back. There's a blue lid on the water well. This is a water well. I drove up the day they finished. They didn't get any water out of this monitoring well. They got ethane and methane. So much so, it was like my water taps. and it was blowing and forcing the lid open, and it was going like this. So they were venting methane and ethane to atmosphere. That's illegal in Alberta. I called colleagues, and they told me to back up very slowly because I could, if I shot up a spark of gravel, it could blow. We called 911. Now this is 2007, and Canada promised the money in 2004, and we got yelled at by community members for daring to put the promise of money at risk. They had to come and put proper cap on that well. They didn't even put fencing around. They didn't even tell our fire department. When the government came the year before to test, I said, I work in the patch. I said, look, you guys don't even have an emergency response plan for this. Give all the people that have contaminated water, give them methane detectors, give our volunteer fire department. They cost about $600. Is that so much? They promised the community, part of it, $150,000, put it into safety equipment. No, they didn't even put fencing until we called 911. This is the well here. It's very beautiful where I live. See how similar it is though, except you don't have the snow well sometimes. This is the well that was venting the gas. This is a swing set in the backyard of a house with toddlers. This county road was a trail the kids used with dirt bikes and quads. The big oil and gas lobby group testified to a parliamentary committee in 2007. I testified there also, begging the government, the federal government, to help. And they said when they're testing for methane in water, they presume it's natural. He's not lying, because all methane is natural. But what kind of testing is that? This is a regulator presentation, factors affecting wellbore leakage. They now know a lot more about how gas leaks up energy wells. And what they have found is that the shallower zones where the natural methane is that they're using to discredit me and Gasland and all those poor people with contaminated water, those are the zones where the shallow natural gas is. They're more prone to leakage than the deep production zones. And their argument is, well, the fingerprint of the gas way down there is not what they're finding in the water. Well, for sure not if the shallower parts of the energy well are more prone to leakage. They now know many more ways for the gas to migrate along the casing. They tell protects us, the cement and the steel. Can go up through the cement, between the cement and the steel, between the cement and the formation, and other ways. You don't have to read all the slide. There's just 2 points. Factors of major impact of gas migration, well deviation. They plan to deviate the wells here. A straight vertical well isn't deviated. When they deviate the well, they don't often get a good seal. Major impact of gas leakage. Now to the hanky-panky that you've all been waiting for. The Research Council was retained to review the government's very bad sham of an investigation into our water contamination. And in their annual report is this statement, that they received funding for research from Alberta Environment and Canada. The regulator that the regulator that didn't properly investigate was Alberta Environment, the company that did the fracking. There's the actual page. When I went public with this, they pulled the entire annual report off the internet, removed that damning statement, because that indicates conflict of interest, and created a whole new annual report, merging it with another year and put it back on the internet. Best in the world, meeting the priorities of industry. And they did dismiss our contamination as natural, suggested bacteria to blame, but they couldn't explain where the methane came from. They ignored the historic records on our water wells that said gas present, that were included in their reports. They ignored the very damning red flag indicators of petroleum industry contamination, petroleum distillates, the chromium, the other man-made toxics. Instead of using those very damning fingerprints, they used fingerprints from gas wells over 100 miles away and said they didn't match. They take away our water, break their promise. We got all the promises you get. It's like I'm reliving my horror story. The first time I saw the lease zone on Tuesday, I was so overwhelmed with emotion because I saw what my community was. We had some conventional oil and gas, but it was before. And here I come and see it again. I don't think my water is safe, so I haul my own. This is my little dog, Magic. He always goes with me. The hose goes into my laundry room window. I had to take the window apart. I live alone. I'm not very good with these kind of things. And my laundry room, my little machine now, my washer is squeezed up against the wall. I have these tanks in there. The water goes in there. I have a pump. But I don't take baths anymore. I had really beautiful water. This is river water, but I don't even think that that's safe. When the plumbers came to set everything up for me, I said, oh, I'm so excited to have safe water. And they said, no, 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 safer. Safer. This is Alberta. We've pretty well contaminated everything. Add insult to the injuries, and Canada stated in the press that they couldn't do any fracking above 200 meters. This is too hard to see, I think. The red are the shallow wells, of which 60 were completed fractured above 200 meters below the surface. 11 of those were above 175 meters. The black are conventional oil and gas wells and deeper fracked unconventional wells. It is a war zone. My water well is in the middle where the yellow is, and this is about 6 miles around my water well. Where the rig crashed over is down here. That's the Rosebud River. A study in the States found the same thing as the other studies, increasing methane in groundwater with increased energy wells. National News came to do a very short story on me. They ran it on a Saturday night. I talked about the regulator's terrible treatment of me. They infringed on my charter rights. You can read about that in the legal statement of claim. There's no time tonight. And the very next week, on Monday morning, I start getting a phone call. I start getting harassed. And the first phone call, I started laughing. And the guy says, this is very serious. Why are you laughing? I said, well, because my story was on the news. And here you are. Well, they wanted me to talk to them. They wanted to come to my home. My lawyers and I said, no. Jessica lives alone. You're not going to have two strange men in her home. We will come to you. They showed up anyways. 4 days later, unannounced. This is out the view out my living room window. You can't see them here. There they are. There's the car. This is my front yard. They sent the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So this was purely to intimidate, I think. We had filed legal papers just prior to this. When they got up to here, the big guy says, he hears the camera, right? And I'm really scared. I'm really, really scared. Never did I think this would happen to me living in Canada. And he says, you can't take our photograph, we're undercover. It'll harm us, it'll harm us. And so I've been telling people in Alberta, we all need to write our Prime Minister Harper and tell him to get our police nice, fluffy, white winter outfits so that they truly can be undercover. If it's natural, the contamination, would they do that? I'm suing. Canadian National Energy Board, they only get 20% of the gas. What happens to the 80%? You now have impermeable layers. What if it becomes fugitive over time and all of it starts migrating up? We have a serious climate change problem, whether you believe in it or not. I'm worried about your heathers and your trees and your grass and your water and your safety. The regulator in British Columbia, remember 2006, the industry admitted to the regulator they didn't know what their shallow fracks do. Well, they had all kinds of incidents in BC. The frack events were communicating other wells. This is on deep, way deeper than they want to do here. The fracks were blowing out other wells. So much so, the regulator had to do a safety advisory, and industry admitted they didn't know what their deep fracks did. At this time, there were 18 communication events. In June, I always look at the data. I noticed that all the records I had seen that said gas present no were pulled off the government database for the water wells. Worse, they changed them. Replaced them with altered records, much the same way the Research Council changed their annual report. There's the one I showed you earlier. This is the new and improved. It's 2 pages to confuse things. Gas present no is what it used to say. Here is where the gas comment is supposed to go, and it's blank. This is on my water well. 2010, they didn't tell us. I save everything, so don't worry. I have all the files. But what about the farmers that don't? What about the people that trust? One of the first things I noticed about coming into Leitrim was an incredible, gentle love and trust in the air from you. Rural people tend to be very gentle and trusting, and they prey on that. This was in our local paper, and Canada finally gives the money. 2010, 6 years later, they double it up, and I thought, oh, bad news is coming, really bad news. Sure enough, the EPA tells Pavilion, Wyoming, which is in the Canafrac field, don't drink the water. Canada agrees to provide water. They're not providing water for the many communities in Alberta with contamination. In Pavilion, the highest level of methane in the water was 800 micrograms. We have 30 to 66,000. The red at the bottom of the page is from a water well south of Rosebud, not near where in Canafrac the aquifer, with an abandoned coal mine on the land. So if ever there was a water well that should have natural methane in it, it's this one. 6 micrograms. That would be 0.006 milligrams per liter. We have 30 to 66. Our government, our ministers of energy, remember our ministers of environment in 2002 knew unconventional gas. They already agreed it poses real threat to us and our water. Well, the energy ministers in the West signed a secret deal with the big oil and gas lobby group that knows how serious a problem gas migration is from ordinary wells, never mind to add the compounded impact of fracking, to use our tax dollars and mainstream media to lie to us and make us believe fracking is safe. Quebec, brand new wells, 31, more than half leaking. Talisman admitted, this is, well, what's your worry? This is normal. The regulator last year in Alberta, deep and shallow shales will be fracked, and hydraulic fracturing can contaminate usable water aquifers with toxic chemicals and is a recognized risk. Jim Reed, the manager that banished me without a trial, 2004, shallow operations can be high risk. They know. Why are they lying to us all? Why are they lying to the media and our politicians? Don't be too hard on your politicians. Be hard on them when they need to have it, but they're being conned. And this is a great story. Jobs, 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 and more jobs. But they'll bring their crews with them. You need to find out how many of you will get the highly trained jobs. How many of those good jobs are going to be brought from afar? And do you guys get to haul the waste? Do you get to do the scab jobs? Then there's the prosperity. Alberta is down the tubes. Our education system's falling apart. Our health is nearly gone. Our infrastructure's falling apart. They destroyed our roads. Our roads are straight. For miles, we have huge shoulders built on sand and clay. I took one look at your roads on the first day. So you know exactly. We can go on to the next chapter. They destroyed our roads. Millions we have paid to have them repaired. They didn't. And some of our brand new paved roads, they had to revert back to gravel because the people can't afford to keep up with the damages the unconventional oil and gas industry is causing us. You never have control. This is by the CEO of the company over in your neighboring country over there in the UK where they're having all those earthquakes. Pretty soon you're going to wake up with your binoculars and you're going to go, hey, Ethel, where did Britain go? It's gone. Senator, that's not funny. For Britain? Well, but this is an experiment. They want to frack Holland. They want to frack Holland. It's below sea level. Yeah. So Quebec, the leaking wells in Quebec now, think of that producer and the agronomist that sent me, I'm just an ordinary citizen. They sent me the photo asking for my help. I don't get paid for any of this. Why did they not send that photo of that white water with their concerns about the health of their livestock, cattle, sheep? What do you all raise here?
Cattle.
Probably the odd luxuries, the odd pets. What are you going to give them? What are you going to give them when the rivers go bad? I wanted to let my neighbor, she needed some grassland. I have 50 acres of great corrals. I had plans for my land. I paid money into fixing up the old place. Put roofs on the barns. I put $3,000 into brand new corrals. I have half a mile of Rosebud River on my land. But she only wanted to put the horses in, she has some pretty fancy horses in the corrals a little bit at a time so they wouldn't colic. And we had to haul water. They use a lot more than me. Okay, let's get back to work. So the regulator says to the companies in Quebec, they demand a moratorium, but you got to fix your leaks. The companies tried and failed. Waterless frack. Have you been promised a waterless frack here?
Yep.
It's robotic because it's so dangerous to workers. They still need chemicals to gel the propane and the butane, even the nitrogen and the CO2. But they don't tell you that. 2 weeks they shut down to try to figure out what went wrong. Of course, we never heard about what went wrong. Chemical-less fracks. If they really can do it, and if Tamboran is sincere and wants to do it for you, it's untried, it's untested. It's an experiment.
Yeah.
It's an experiment. Someone last night, a cleric, a gentleman said a great thing. We were talking about the cement, and he said, well, doesn't cement need to cure? We have a lot of water here, and they're going to be fracking with water. So what will happen to that cement seal? Will it ever be a seal? I saw the land. I walked on the land today. Had to put gumboots on. I'm not a big frack truck. I'm not cement. It's wet lands. It's beautiful lands. You have beautiful land. Where will the water come from? I've just given you a whole bunch of industry research and regulator research on how bad the gas migration problem is before they even do the big perforations, all the holes in the casing and the fracking. You still have that problem with waterless fracks, chemical-less fracks. EPA had a workshop last year, even with the tools available. Their predictions, it's a challenge when they frack. That's a really powerful study, this one. I presented at the United Nations in May. I came home on May 7th, and on May 9th, this study was released. They have now quantified, in one part of North America anyhow, 17 times more methane near drilled and fracked energy wells than water wells further away. People phoned me up and thought that I had orchestrated this because we went public with my legal case just before I went to New York. But I didn't know about the study. It was perfect timing. We have leprechauns in Alberta too. European Union report. High risk if they do it wrong. Possible high risk if they do it right. American U.S. Geological Survey scientists said we are just starting to learn. It's an experiment. I never thought I would see this to the day I died. I've been a lone voice. A brutal, brutal journey of most of the people in my province trying to shut me up. And Albertan, I call it Alberta is beginning to rumble.
Yeah.
And I love it. I never thought I would see this. This is our Welcome to Alberta sign. It's the real sign. The what fresh hell is this? It's Shakespeare. There's a group northwest of Calgary that is being fracked. All the rich CEOs from the oil industry live there. And they're beginning to get cracks in their brand new foundations of their multi-million-dollar homes. Water wells, the water's turning brown and then vanishing altogether. They have so many properties up for sale and nobody's buying. Isn't that interesting, Justice? Well, there's citizens there too, and farmers and ranchers, some very big historic ranchers. They are demanding a moratorium. I'm ashamed to be Canadian through most of my journey. But now these guys are forcing me to maybe be proud again. I'm really proud of Alberta for this. So we have the best in the world. You must ask yourselves what you're going to get. Canadian government finally, 10 years too late, they said they're going to do 2 reviews. They're not studying fracking, 2 reviews. This is the federal government. Take about 2 years to do. In the meantime, drill and frack, drill and frack. I believe this is just a delay tactic. Calm the masses down. Go home, go back to the pub. We're taking care of business. But our provincial regulator, a month later, removes all the limits. I don't want to go home. You have me now forever. I'm staying. Frack hell. And it is already frack hell. It's never enough with the unconventionals. So why deregulate? Is fracking that bad? That the regulators have to get rid of all the regulations in secret? They didn't go public with this. Yes, fracking is that bad. Compressors. We were told that there would never be more than 2 in a row. Promise. Promise. We have numerous 6 in a row. They make a lot of noise, air pollution. They're ugly. One of the first journalists that ever interviewed me, we were emailing back and forth. It was quite a comprehensive piece, and I don't know, I have a weird sense of humor, and he says, well, what do they look like to you? Like he's seen them. He says, but what do they look like to you? It's your community. You look at them. I said, there was only one at the time. I said, it's an ugly piece of shit noisemaker. And he put that at the beginning of the article. Yeah, and it was in the Canadian Business magazine. The article, it's available. And my friends of my mother said, Gerda, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I was pretty embarrassed. More of those legal land descriptions for the signs of the gas wells. So our cemetery at Rosebud, you have much more beautiful cemeteries here. This rig is in Canada drilling under my land last fall. When you are fracked, that's not enough. They come back and frack you again and again and again, and you know, I hate to be kind of blunt, but they don't even give you a box of condoms. That's kind of how bad it is. I know it's tasteless, but that's the reality of it. No safety. No safety for the people or the water. So, same cemetery, a few days later, different rig, shallow gas well, another one. There it is there. The red in the back is the new water reservoir. The church in the hamlet, the land between the church and the rig is my land. Waste pits, unlined. Industry people say to me, Jess, you can't say that. No, they line the waste pits. Well, they do not. I went and took a look. I stood on the fence and took pictures. Dust, roads. Look at how straight, look at that road. They're destroying the roads in Alberta. You think of these big trucks. How heavy is water, drilling waste, chemicals? There's the rig drilling under my land. That's my barn I showed you earlier, where the contaminated water is. Radioactivity. This is in Canada, drilling under my land again, same rig. This is the Rosebud River Valley. It's very stunning, beautiful. Compressors, compressor, 2 compressors here. Oh, the slide projector is cutting them off. There's a compressor there and a compressor there. And Canada's token noise control. Their own noise engineer said, oh, the noise will just go over the straw bale wall. It rots from time to time. Imagine what that straw bale wall would do here in the rain. I am an environmental consultant, like these type of impacts and comparing rotting straw bale walls in my country and yours. That's my job. Or used to be. I don't get much work anymore. Another well. Yeah, I just get called to other communities to do. See these white trucks here? Here's the rig. See those? I wrote the regulator when they gave license for this. I raised concerns. I said, the water's too dangerous to have connected to my home. I have to haul water. It's hard. I asked a bunch of questions. What about the waste? The fish scale shales in Alberta are reportedly radioactive. What are you going to do with the waste? Yeah, hey, don't look at me like that. You think Ireland's the only place where you have to worry about radioactivity? We have it back home too. And they said, don't worry, they won't dump the waste adjacent to your land. They gave Encana license in 1 day to drill under my land. I don't even think they will. That's the truck. That's drilling waste. That's agricultural land. It's cropland. They tell the farmers it's free fertilizer, which is partly true. There is some aspect to that, but there's also lots of other stuff in that. And if that's the radioactive fish scale shales they're drilling into, what about accumulation on the soil? What about your food? What about your baby formula? What about your lakes, your lochs, and your fish? Do tourists come here to fish?
Yep.
Do you fish? Do you eat the fish? You better start eating a lot fast. And Canada has a document that says we work it in. They call that land farming, land spreading. That's drilling waste. What Mother Nature put underground isn't meant to be disposed like this. When the photographer and I took pictures, it was a very windy day like you have here sometimes. The people were coming out of the church with the children down in the valley. They were dumping near the little creek runoffs into the Rosebud River. And you could see the waste blowing also on the wind. The photograph didn't pick it up. They work it in, they say, to prevent adverse effects to the land. A month later, I took these photos. They didn't work it in. Now we have 25 frac communication events in BC. That was last November. 31 earthquakes. They started the fracking in 2009. We have earthquakes also in the frac fields. Reporting is voluntary, and the regulators aren't even allowed to disclose company names. The EPA came out with their draft report in December. I've never seen a company squeal like a pig, like I saw in Canada squeal. Oh, it's a bad stuff. No. They refused this. They're fighting it tooth and nail. There's no accountability when they frack you. They linked frack chemicals to the contamination there in the groundwater and in the water wells. Now I have even more Albertans doing me proud. This is a very conservative group of farmers. They phoned me up in the summer all excited. Jess, what do you think of this idea? We're going to buy a used trailer, we're going to get banners made. What do you think? I said, oh, that's fantastic. I didn't put too much excitement in it because, a lot of people don't follow through, but they did. This was January 4th. That's the other side of the trailer. It's on a very busy highway where all the frack crews drive. It's fantastic. They're demanding a moratorium too. A few weeks later, we have a big, serious frack blowout. A man is coming home from work. He sees fluid shooting out of this abandoned oil well. It wasn't being used. was shooting in the air. And this is all the fluid here. The snow was completely sprayed with it. He runs home, he phones the regulator emergency response line, and they don't answer the phone. He has to call a group like your group here for help. He had to go look for the frack crew. The fluids and oil are shooting out another well 1,200 meters away. And the frack crew didn't even notice something was wrong. He had to go tell them to shut it down. Those workers do not know what they're standing in. Do you want to bring your children home for jobs like this?
No!
I don't want to see your children come home for jobs like this. I think you can do a lot better. I'm sorry. It would be a wonderful dream, fantasy, that we have jobs for your people here, for your youth, for the kids in school to know they can stay home, and for prosperity for all. It's a pipe dream, no pun intended with all the pipes. That's really bad. It's been a long tour. More cleanup. Oh, those trees were dripping. So in that directive I told you about in 2006, where the industry admitted that they were damaging oil field wells, this was stated by the regulator. Frack communications, all fracture treatments must not reach any other wellbore, including energy or water well. Do they work with fracking?
No.
Do regulations work? Let's hear you.
No!
Ah, come on.
No!
That's pretty good. This is boring, it's data, but it's really important data. It's not publicly available on the regulator's website. It was sent to an environmental group in the province. They released they have had 5 of these since 2008. These are on the deep horizontal, I'm almost finished. The deep horizontal frack experiments. What really scares me, there's 1,600 meters, that's a mile, that's bad. But what's really scary to me is the other one in red. The subsurface communication means their targeted zone is here, and the fluids have shot this way, not this way. That's really scary. If they're fracking here at 500 meters, and they have a frack out at 500, and the crews don't notice, with your terrain that I saw, within 5 minutes on the tour, I went, oh man, we have flats at Alberta. You saw the stuff was pooling on the farmer's field. Where will it do that here? It's very serious, the type of terrain you have here. Intentional dump of fluids. This happened just recently. A man goes out down his county road, he sees a truck dumping fluids. He stops, he says, hey, what are you doing? The dumper says it's just water. Don't worry, go home. We have it all under control. The man was very smart. Albertans are rumbling. He called the police. The police came. The regulator didn't. The fluid reeked of diesel, was black. I think that was January 31. February 2nd, a citizen in the community, not the regulator should be taking pictures like this. Citizen, a mother of 2 young children. I told her over the phone, this stuff could be really toxic, be careful. That's nighttime. She has children to take care of, but this is 2 days later, and Alberta's very dry. If that was Ireland, maybe it would still be water. It's black. It's very dry in Alberta. That's not water. That's a county road that we pay for. The regulator told the company to go clean it up. To the best of my knowledge, the regulator never went, because if you don't go inspect, there's no statistic. Right? That's why they can tell you, oh, no, they don't, there's no spills, there's never been a contamination case, nothing. This just happened, what day is it today? 24, yesterday. After Cleric got into my room after midnight, and this was in my email. This is actually, now that I have a little bit of time to think about this, this is incredible. Yes. National Farmers Union across Canada. They represent thousands of Canadian farmers. These are mostly really conservative people. They're calling for a moratorium. And I sent it out to some people last night, and first thing this morning, some Americans said, hey, what about the American Farmers Union? And one of the quotes, hydraulic fracturing, a danger to water, food, farmland. That's the best summation I've ever seen. And I thought I was good in writing. That's the best that I've seen sum up fracking. There's their letter. Not many, in their letter it says, not many of these stories, they're talking about water contamination cases like mine, get made public because the oil and gas companies usually force farmers to sign confidentiality agreements in return for replacement of their water. Will I sign one of these with my legal case? I'm not doing my case for money. I'm doing it for you. I don't have children. For your children and for water. I will not sign one. It's like a walking off the plank. But that's how important and how bad I think this is. Promises. The promises I hear here are almost identical to what we get back home. We'll be, oh no, we won't use any chemicals, and in fact, we don't even frack, Encana said to their investors in 2010. We stimulate. They do. We stimulate nature. Nature does the fracking. There's a few Irish that are a little slow. It's pretty funny, eh? Do you get it? Yeah. Well, why would you, see, in America, fracking caused all the contamination. Why do you think they said on the TV last night that you guys don't even know how to spell fracking? That was funny. I had to really fight, not to, I was biting. Don't start laughing. Stimulate sounds sexual. You're not gonna go to the silly frack meeting at the Rainbow. You're gonna go to the bar and talk stimulate. And you're not gonna be worried. Comfort, who said comfort? Comfort, it's comforting. Stimulating doesn't shatter formations. Frack, the reason that the media came up with that with decay, frack is what it symbolizes what they're doing. Frack, break, crack. Right? Stimulate, come on, that's for the bedroom. Or maybe your bedrooms in Ireland are different, but let's not go into that. Tambourine, we'll go above and beyond. In Canada, we always meet and or exceed the regulations. They do not. Only use nitrogen, commitment, promises. So say, okay, you promised, and put it into writing with lawyers, and every single one, I am very, very proud of your county councillors. I've been following Ireland for quite a long time, and I read about the bans, but long before I was even asked to come here. So get them all to sign a legal document saying Tambourine will not use any chemicals. And you watch him sign that with many witnesses. I've already covered this. Impossible to frack without chemicals because you have to drill the well bore and service it. Then there's the blowouts. Remember the rig that tipped over and the frack outs? Mistakes, human nature. The new experimental brute force fracking, no matter how you spell it, brings a war that knows no borders. In the week that I've been here, I have come to love the border between North and South. Why? Because that is a symbol that's really critical in this frack war. Fracking knows no borders globally. The romantic Irish, I took a risk here, Love Leitrim. That's a great name. It's a fantastic name, Love Leitrim. It's beautiful here. Love Leitrim, yes, and all counties, and communities, and people. regardless of their view. Do not let them divide you. Hash this out, fight it out, argue it out. But love your neighbors with your differences. And prove to the world that there is a country that this industry cannot divide, regardless of that border you have. And look at that border with pride. All of you, on all sides. It's a fantastic border to use in this. In terrible adversity, as you know, comes healing. It's a global issue. 688 jails, 142 basins worldwide. You're not the only ones. I have told you that laws and regulations don't protect us. And when you're fracked, there's no aftercare.
Now it's over.
Thank you, Jessica. I can see by the response in the hall that you all feel a bit like I do. That's quite overwhelming, really. And I think we've been given a great opportunity here tonight to hear from somebody who has lived through what we might get to live through in the next 10 years. So, Jessica, thank you very much. And I know that Jessica has made it really plain tonight that she's very interested in what you have to say. She wants to hear your questions. She wants to hear your comments. I think we have about a half an hour, okay? And there's a really big crowd in the hall tonight, and I don't want to be the big bad witch again of telling everybody to shut up all the time. So what I'd really like you to do is to just show a little respect for one another and just make sure that whatever you've got to say is something that's a question that Jessica can answer. We can talk to each other at other times. Jessica's only here tonight. Let's make the best possible use of it. And can I just encourage people who don't normally come forward to please do speak up. Charlie here is going to go around with the roving mic. I'll do my best to take people in order. If you put your hand up, I'll do my best. If I don't see you, wave and shout at me, and I'll do my very best. And can you please just, I have to say this to you, refrain from speech making.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say it again, refrain from speech making, please, and respect everybody's time. I would like everybody's voice to get heard insofar as possible. And when you're saying something and asking a question, can you just say your name? So if it's Joe or it's Eliza or whatever it is, just your name, your question. Wait until the microphone comes to you and speak loudly and clearly. And I'll check that everybody's heard the questions, because there's nothing more frustrating than somebody asking something, you don't bloody know what it is, somebody else is answering it, and you don't know what they're talking about. So I'll do my best. So please don't be afraid to ask questions either, because it doesn't matter how stupid or foolish you think your question is, if you've got it in your mind, somebody else has it in theirs. Every question is important. Are you in business? Right, I hope. Okay. Sorry, I've got somebody who had their hand up in front of you down there at the back, in the middle, and then I'll come to you again. Michael, isn't it? I'm going to try and spread it around the hall so that we get an even representation.
Jessica, Thomas Kelly.
Can you stand up, please?
Yeah, the people that are in Scotland that are doing this investigation, if they were to come back and tell us what we all already know, that fracking is dangerous, do you think the frackers will pack their bags and go home? And on the other hand, if the EP were to say that fracking is safe, do you think we should just close shop and go home as well? and do like what some of our politicians are telling us, that they were quite prepared to, the EP tells us to accept it.
Okay, thanks Thomas. Are you okay with them?
Yeah, tough question. I'm afraid, I'm a scientist, I can't tell you what to do. And even if I could, I think it's important that that's the work you have to do when I go home. It's your community. You have to decide. I'm happy to help you. The study that's being done, look at it, respect it. But I think you have very good reason to use the science that's available in a country that's pretty heavily drilled. We have 600,000 abandoned wells in Canada. And demand, nicely, I wouldn't even ask, but demand that Tamborian gives their license back to prove to Ireland they have integrity, and to wait a few years until all the other countries make all the mistakes for you. Because I think this is coming to a really big ugly head. There's a lot of bad things happening. Well, the EPA just today said, the administrator, they think they can come up with regulations to make fracking safe. I disagrey. I really do. This, I think, is a big hedge fund. I think it's a big bubble. Investors are getting nervous. So are our insurance companies.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Mary. Jessica, thank you very, very much indeed. It's there's a difference between what we're going through and what you're going through. We're at an advantage. You've added to that by your presence here tonight. Jessica, her community did not know that the companies were lying. You didn't know that government and the regulatory bodies were more concerned about the company welfare than they were about the people's welfare. We now know that, thanks to you and the people like you. We now know that.
Do you have a question?
The question is this. There are attempts now been made by government, by the Irish government. The Commission for Energy Regulation has put out for public consultation papers which require detailed technical knowledge, and they put them out for public consultation. Now, I've read as much as I can about fracking, but I would need technical help. Can you recommend people who would have that technical knowledge, who can assist the general public and those who represent them to come up with proper responses to those requests?
Thank you, Michael.
I'm only one person. I have no office. I have no support staff because I hardly make any money anymore in my business. I have offered Ireland and all your elected officials, county, to the higher levels help. And I will try to find you people to help you, but I can help whenever I have time in any way that I can. I'm willing to do that.
Thanks, Jessica. Thank you, Michael.
My name is Nuala McNulty. I'm a member of the Manor Hamilton Stimulation Awareness Group.
They'll be talking about you, I tell you.
Jessica, I have a question. I know it's not your area of expertise, but have you seen what has happened with, say, in the farmland, crops, animals? You talk about ranchers and farmers. I'm not sure what the difference is. Is one horses and one cattle? Or the size of the farms? What are the differences?
I don't quite understand. How do you mean the differences?
You talk earlier about you have ranchers and farmers.
Yeah.
What are the differences?
Oh, I'm sorry. The ranchers raise beef, mainly. There is some sheep. The farmers grow the grain. Some people mix it up. I'm sorry. Yeah, I probably should call them all one. Sometimes the farmers get insulted if you can lump them in with the ranchers and vice versa. Albertans are very sensitive men. Those guys there, those conservatives, you gotta be careful. Especially someone like me. I mean, 30 years ago, doing environmental work, yeah.
So my question is, the effect on the crops or the animals, are you aware of that in Alberta? What has happened through the pollution and the water contamination? Or is that yet to come?
Oh, there's already problems starting to happen. Some of the farmers, ranchers, where the people that have accepted the drilling waste, the land spreading, that got fooled by it, they said never again. It made such a mess of their soil and created all kinds of lumping problems. I mean, these farmers work really hard to create really good soil so it doesn't blow away in the wind. And then when they said no to more land spreading, the companies trespassed and dumped it anyways. Deformed cattle, abortions. Some of the farmers now, the ranchers and farmers, are noticing water where they are injecting massive amounts of fluids, gases, water, chemicals underground, under ever increasingly high pressures. And where ranches in history have never had standing water, suddenly water is bubbling up and flooding acres of land. These farms have their corrals there, and for the calves, for their calving. When they call the regulator to come look, the regulator says, oh, that's natural, and they don't bother investigating. A neighbor in that 6 miles, they're discovering more, and the Hutterites are also finding this massive areas of farmland that are becoming like a quicksand, but it's not sand, it's the actual farmland that's if you walked into it, you would sink in, or if you drive your farm equipment, so they can't farm it. So they're losing land and livestock.
Okay, that's, thank you very much. Depressing kind of a picture. Okay.
Hello, my name is Scott Coombs, and I just wanted to know about insurance and planning permissions, things like that. Do you have trouble getting insurance now, and do you have trouble getting permission to erect dwellings or buildings on your land?
Did everybody hear that? It's a question about insurance and planning permission for erecting dwellings and buildings.
That's a fantastic question. A few things, I'll try to be really fast. Erecting buildings, these abandoned wells, the gas leakage story with the fracking is now so bad in Alberta that not last year but the year before, the regulator has now put the responsibility of industry's gas migration onto the landowner. 15 meters of any abandoned well, even when you're no longer getting your lease money on it, you cannot erect anything. You can't put a house, you can't put a barn. You lose your land forever. The companies should buy that from you. And the reason is because in a subdivision by Edmonton, gas was found bubbling up into a puddle of a schoolyard. And they had to tear down 5 homes and bring in a new rig to try to fix the gas leaking. Insurance is a very big problem. The insurance companies are getting very nervous. I'm amazed. Every year that my home insurance comes, I'm very happy to pay the bill. Because I keep waiting for the company to say, your land's, you got danger under your land, you have a bomb under your land, we can't insure your home. What's more important though, I've got some of the farmers that didn't want to believe me years ago, but they wanted help. I said to them, who's your banker? Oh, this Frank, we went to school together, we lived here all our lives. Okay, you trust him? Yes. Go to him with your farm plan. That's your aerial photo, right? Your buildings, your acres of land, where your corrals are. You go to him with the plan, and they have about 6-7 gas wells on their land. Go to them with the planned unconventional wells that Encana now wants to do. And ask him what monies they will lend you on that land using it as collateral. I went back to the farmer 2 weeks later, and he was devastated because his friend wouldn't answer him. We have letters from banks and treasury branches refusing farmers the ability to use their land as collateral to buy their seeding and fertilizer, which is very expensive on the big farms because the environmental liability is too massive in Alberta. Has anyone in Ireland done an economic impact assessment of that for you here?
Okay. Got somebody over there.
Hello, my name is Michael Chandley and I'm an ex-fire officer, and I'm just kind of mind-boggling the Environmental Protection Agency, DPA and such. I would have had a lot of dealings in my role, let's say with DPA here, on the strict controls to do with industry, you know, use of solvents and solvent recovery systems. And even with a barrel or something, that the regulations that are there for making it safe is absolutely is very strict, and rightly so. But from listening to what you've been actually saying in your dealings with the EPA, would it be fair to say that, I want to word this right, that the EPA may act under pressure by not being as strict as they should be? Obviously, certainly haven't been with you. And what I really want to say is, I think that's the road maybe we should go down, is to put an awful lot of pressure on the EPA in our own country here to go down on this, because I'm actually mind-boggled with the dangers that are there.
Okay, thank you very much. So that question was about the EPA and whether or not the EPA are bowing under pressure, basically, from the companies.
I think so. I think the situation, the companies are getting desperate, and I have spoken to bankers and some staff, and the companies are treating them as badly as they treat us. That's why I'm asking you to have compassion for your politicians. The EPA, yeah, it's very bad. It's very bad. And I think it's because they know the damages are so bad from the fracking, but we're running out of oil and gas. So the governments are torn because people want the resource, they want the revenues to come in to maintain the country's lifestyles. So everybody's feeling squeezed, including your EPA.
Can I just add that the Irish EPA was given an immunity from prosecution by the government, and that doesn't make me feel protected.
Okay. Well, and what about your water? We have the same thing in Canada.
Okay, thank you.
Aideen McLaughlin. When I look at your presentation, sorry, there's
Don't know why.
yeah, it's maybe. When I look at your presentation, I see a lot of drills in different parts of the land.
Sorry, can everybody hear this at the moment?
Maybe if it's like this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
would that be better? Sorry, when I see the presentation, I see a lot of rigs kind of going through the land like that. What we are presented with is 60 pads in North Leitrim with about 2 miles apart and up to 24 drills from each one. So what I'm wondering is, with all this talk of frackouts, and it was only since Jessica came here that I've actually heard of frackouts, where they're pushing liquids down one bore and it's coming out another. What I'd like to ask Jessica, could you comment on, do you think that poses an even increased risk of frackouts with the kind of operation that's proposed for Leitrim?
Okay, thank you.
I don't know about increased, but the area northeast British Columbia where those 25 incidents of frac communication events have been happening on the deep fracking, that's a pretty remote area, pretty wild, and those are on big pads. Like the different formations around my area, we also have big pads. But I just haven't had time to go take photographs of the big pads in my community. Those are the older ones where they had promised to keep them small, but the leases are getting bigger and bigger. In your case here, yes, there's that study that I quoted towards the end, the industry one at the frac workshop last year by the American EPA. The industry man said, as they increase the drilling and fracking, it increases the chance of communicating. So every time they drill another one, the risk increases. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you very much, Jessica. I think we've got somebody over here, and I've got somebody here and there. If you want to get in the queue, can you just raise your hand so I can see you? Thanks, folks.
Thomas White. My question is about how are these gas wells interconnected with all the main gas pipeline? It looks like as though there's compressors on every hill, and it looks, are the gas lines running across land? And can you stop the gas company putting them across the land?
No, you can't stop them, but you can if you're a very shrewd negotiator. But how many farmers have time to do a lot of shrewd negotiating? The pipelines are everywhere. I could create a map. When I look at the map of the pipelines of Alberta, it's like this big, it's shocking. You can't say no. The compressors, they did a very smart job, and they'll do that here. The farmers in my province, I keep telling them, be careful. Tell the company that you are saving that part of the land. In my county, you're only allowed to make one subdivision per quarter section of land, which is 160 acres. So you can take that, let's say 20 acres out, sell it for a good fee to a city dweller or for your children or their grandchildren. And Canada has been placing their compressors, very good observation that you made, on the best viewpoints and on the best parts of each piece of land. And the farmers aren't, I mean, they're busy farming. So they're not noticing the dramatic loss in asset to their land. So what they think they're getting prosperity with a little bit of leases. The compressors are multiplying like crazy. I heard there will be no processing here, but this gas doesn't want to come up. They're going to have to compress it. It's noisy, incredibly noisy, polluting, and they take land.
Okay, thanks Jessica. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 more people at the moment in the queue, and we've got about 10 minutes left. So can you just make your questions short, folks, please?
Jessica, Sean McSherry, thanks very much for your presentation. I just read there a statistic, 29% higher cancer rates where fracking occurs. Would that be, in your case, have you seen instances of that in your own area? Cancer and respiratory diseases?
I have. We've had, the fracking has been started in around 2001. I think it's too soon. In the States where they're starting to get some of the stats, they've been doing it longer. But we do have a lot of oil and gas, a lot of breast cancers in my community. There's lots of health problems. It's really hard for me to keep on top of them, I'm sorry. There are, though, more and more doctors that are raising warnings about the fracking. They didn't want to. Pediatricians raised the alarm last year, all across Mexico, America, and Canada, and now the doctors are getting on board. I think 250 medical doctors for health reasons, because the chemicals are dire, and it's a lot of emissions. So I think, unfortunately, it's a waiting game.
Okay.
And I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. That's great.
Hello, Jessica. Terry McDermott. I don't know if it's too soon in the history of fracking to be able to answer this, but I mean, Tambourne are saying, you know, we'll have 50 years of gas. You know, I'm wondering what do we do after the 50 years. I've seen a graph which shows, okay, there's not a constant rate of gas, that it peaks quite soon after you start fracking, and then the other 40 years are, well, it's a piddle, you know. And basically, some people are saying, you know, why are we going for this anyway? Because we are already committed to finding alternative means of energy, like it's a 2020 agreement with the government and the EU are committed to.
Okay.
To me, it seems like shale gas. Yeah, well, shale gas seems like just putting off the inevitable. I mean, do you have any information as a scientist on, you know, how long the gas does in fact last compared with what's been promised?
Okay, that's a good question, thank you. In case anybody didn't hear that question, it's about what happens after the first 50 years of gas. Effectively, that was the...
couple of years.
Well, even the first few years.
Yeah, we got the same promises. 40 years, those wells will last. What we're noticing is within a year or two they come back. They tell us only one truck will be required to go into the well and no roads. But they keep sending more and more trucks and more rigs because they keep having to re-perforate and re-frack because, yes, after 1 or 2 years, they have really good production in the beginning, dramatic drop-off. 40 years, some of the geologists in Alberta have sent me graphs, and many researchers in America think it's really a great big scam to try to get investors to buy in. And the New York Times, if you search on the internet, Ian Urbina exposed great information on that question. But because we were promised the same thing, I don't believe the promise Tambourne gave you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I just say I'm getting loads of people up the front here asking questions, and not very many women. So girls, speak up, and if you want to ask any questions down the back, just in case I haven't seen you, you know, please do get in on the act. Okay. Charlie? Sorry, Charlie? Just drop here.
My name is John McQuaid. I didn't hear you make any reference to your legal system in Canada. And I was just wondering, have the people tried to use their legal system to vindicate their rights and to avoid the damage that has been caused to their lives? Now, we in this country have a Supreme Court whom I think would frown very much upon what has been inflicted upon the people of Alberta.
Okay. Good question, thank you. It's about whether people have used the legal system in Canada to look for their rights.
Very seldom. It's a very scary path. My lawyers have warned me it'll probably take 10 to 12 years for me because the opposing parties have all the money and the power, and they will delay as much as they can, do all kinds of terrible things to eat up the funds. Very, very few. The confidentiality agreement is the way most landowners go, because the companies come and say, if you don't do this, you won't have water. People are afraid. My tour, who took me out the other day, said he believes that, he says, do you think the spirit of the Alberta people has been broken? Yes, I said. Legally, even things are changing very fast in Alberta. They've brought in some very scary legislation that some of your politicians have said to me after. They don't believe it, but it's all publicly available. You can read the laws. One of them, they've taken away basically our right to ownership of the land. We still take care of it and pay the taxes, but I think it's to access the water because they need so much water for the fracking. They only have to give 7 days notice. They can take away your land. They don't have to pay you for it. They can take away a strip anywhere on it to give access to the water without paying you. And the worst part of the legislation is if it's closed door decision by one minister, and if he thinks that you are imagining possibly protesting, he can throw you in jail or even writing a letter without access to the courts. A $200,000 fine, 2 years in jail. Well, but that's how bad fracking is. They say that was for transmission lines and utility corridors for the public interest, but they took public out, and it's private. And they said you'll get paid fair market value, but they took fair out. And that tells me how bad fracking is. So they're decimating our rights.
Okay, thank you, Jessica.
Hello, Jessica. Thank you for a great presentation. The thing I wanted to know was the zillions of litres of chemicals that are pumped down to frack. How many of them are there? Because it's all that we kept somewhere afterwards in our rainy counties here. All we kept in ponds and wind up going to the water supply. How many litres are you talking about for all of that? Or frack?
Okay, just in case people didn't hear the question, because the microphone's a bit dodgy, like myself. It's about the chemicals that are going to be used for one fracking operation, one well. How many roughly would we be talking about, because they have to be disposed of afterwards? That was it? How many litres? Okay.
Well, but Tamboran told you they're not going to use any. They answered your question. Why are you asking me? No, it's okay. That's a very important question. The companies are now answering that question around the world in percent. Right? You've already figured that out. So you have to ask how many pounds. Some of the chemicals are powders, so they come in 25 kilogram bags. Some come in liter pails. Some come in huge trucks. I don't know. I can't even find out what they injected under my land. How am I going to tell you what they're planning to do here or anywhere else? It's a great big mystery, but it's a lot. Hundreds and hundreds of pounds and hundreds of liters. There is a book coming out by a landowner group in Alberta on the history of fracking that will have a pretty big chapter on that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. We're getting close to going home time, or going to the pub time, depending on where you're heading. Is there anybody else down here that wants to ask a question? Again, I'll just say to you, we won't have this opportunity again. Okay, thank you. Just your name and your question, please.
Jerry Bedland's my name. I just wondered, when you take the gas out of the ground, it must leave a void.
It does.
Now, what is actually put in there to seal that void, and how effective is it?
Well, nothing. In Texas and California, they're having land subside because of that. I think in some areas, a foot or so. It's a very serious problem, and in our province, where they've already been extracting so much, and now with the fracking, we're stimulating, what's happening under there? It's a very serious, the cumulative effects have not been looked at that I know of.
Okay, I think we've got somebody here. Thanks. Just your name and your question, thanks.
Sean Dillon. You talked about them leasing land. Is that to avoid any risk when the ownership reverts back to the farmers? Does the risk transfer to the farmer then for cleaning up any spills or anything after that?
Yeah, our past premier a few times ago, he changed our Surface Rights Act in Alberta, and it actually states right in it that if the companies walk away, which they always do, or if they go bankrupt, which they often do, I think we'll see a lot of that in the fracking. Legally, the landowner in Alberta is liable. It's very scary.
Yep, that's scary all right, isn't it? Okay. Sean, I'll hand it to you now. Thanks everybody.
Can I
yes, please,
interrupt Mary for 1 second?
Yeah, absolutely.
I see an awful lot of, I can't let you go home like this. No, it breaks my heart. No, I can't do that either, but I believe that this terrible, terrible thing can be a very powerful positive around the world. You can make this happen, but it doesn't happen here, and you can do better with other things. You can make it what you want it to be if you all work at it. It is bad, yes, but I do. One of the most incredible things that came out of this, and I am afraid every day, but I have found a power I never knew I had. I never knew I was this powerful. And I am the same as you all. We are incredibly powerful if we choose to let ourselves be that. And I think that this fracking is showing a lot of people around the world that. So when you get the most down, turn it around. Turn it into a positive thing, and use your imagination to work it positive, because I think it can be done, or I wouldn't have come.
Last question for you. Michael Leonard here is my name. As we're living on the edge of a geopark here, can we lose our geopark status with this fracking now as it goes wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, you're going to lose a lot more than that. You're going to lose your reputation globally. You're going to lose your tourism, your fishing, your... Never mind what your communities will lose. Yeah.
No doubt about it, and of course the geopark runs right across the border in through to West Fermanagh, which is considered the jewel in the environmental crown of the north. Just to say to you folks, you've heard a lot here tonight. We've been given a lot of information, a lot of food for thought, and a lot of encouragement to ask the right questions, put the pressure on the right people, and make sure that whatever we choose to do as a community, we understand what the consequences are, not just for us in the short term, but for the people coming behind us. And just before I hand over to Sean to wind up the evening, I'll just remind you that the Love Leitrim group are just outside the door there on the left-hand side, and they've got t-shirts for sale and stickers which are to help this campaign. So if you want to go and talk to people there, that's grand. And thanks to Charlie for running about with the mic.
Well, thanks very much for chairing the session. You've done a great job there. Jessica, once again, a big thank you for putting on that presentation. You're speaking from the heart, and it's very easy to follow what you spoke about. You people that came here tonight, the meeting would be no good, or gathering wouldn't be any good if we hadn't people here. And I'm just thinking that we could try and get Jessica here for every dance we have. She'd definitely will have a crowd here when she will be here. It's a serious issue, and it won't go away, and a lot has been said tonight. It'll put people thinking, and but once again I want to thank everyone that helped in any way to make this happen tonight. I won't name individuals because I leave someone out, but I suppose a big hand again for Jessica for making the big effort to come here. Just before you go, somebody here handed me a piece of paper about a meeting next Tuesday night at 8:30 in the B Park. We can't pay, we won't pay, and it's a meeting, and the speaker on the night is Councillor John Campbell. I think it's somebody called. So that's Tuesday night, the 28th at 8:30 p.m. in the B Park. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.